morning and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. I'm starting the video in a slightly different position vis-a-vis the camera because I've just actually been filming part 2 of this video. I've been cheating a bit, and so I wondered whether as an experiment it might be worth trying a much closer view for this part. So today we are looking at part 3 of our Milk White series. We have looked at 2 tea so far, and I'm just going to pick up the packaging. Fairly standard packaging from the vendor. There's not much that we can deduce from it, but this is the second one, Milk White Tea Bundle, and we've got information on here that it's white tea from the factory who produced it, that it's a family farm, the date of harvest and the region it originally came from, also the weight of each bundle inside. And then you have much the same information in the standard packaging for the dumplings as well. Now, because it's fairly standard packaging, I didn't want to dwell on it until this point, because this is the packaging for our third one, which is a broom tea. And here, as you can tell immediately, this is a bit different. Let me compare this to one of the standard packagings, and you can see instead of this heavy-duty craft paper bag, we actually have an elongated cardboard box. And see if I can bring it a little closer. The characters, at least here, the legend is telling us Zhenghe Bai Broom Tea, or Zhenghe White Broom Tea. A reminder that this tea is a little different in terms of white tea. It doesn't come from Fujian, the kind of classic area most associated with white tea. It comes inland and at a higher altitude, a neighbouring county of Zhenghe. So that's the packaging for this tea. Now, because this is a different format of tea, it's basically a bundle of dried out leaves and sticks. They're not folded, they're not kind of carefully wrapped around each other. I only wanted to open it the once, and so I've opened it already, and I wanted to show you just now what this looks like. We'll do a close-up, but I wanted you to have a chance to see it as is. So there you go. That's rather different to the bundle and the dumpling. We're going to take a quick smell. There's still the smell of freshness that you get with white tea. I was thinking about this yesterday. To my mind, it comes across like freshly mown grass a little bit. Not once it's dried out and it started, even worse, started to mulch or ferment, but just when it's freshly cut, that herbal zinginess, that's what I get from, it's one of the flavor profiles of white tea, and it's definitely coming off this bundle of leaves. So there's a lot of tea here, I believe, but I'll double check. This is 30 grams. That's an awful lot of tea. If you saw our previous video on the milk white tea bundle, that was about 10 grams, and that made for about 4.5 litres of tea. So this would make a humongous amount. So what's recommended by One River Tea is to take the standard amount, let's say 5 or 6 grams, maybe a touch more, and then prepare that in a gaiwan. So that's what we'll be doing in a moment. Not sure yet how we do that. I might have to remove some of, I don't know whether to unfasten this here, in which case it's going to go all over the place, or just take out the bundles, the sticks that I need, and then we'll see what we do. Anyway, we'll make sure it works, and I'll see you in part 2 for a close-up, and then I'll see you in part 3 for a brewing. Take care. Welcome to part 2 of this video, where we're going to take a closer look at the tea inside the box. This is our broom tea, a bundle of broom tea. I want to phrase it that way so as not to confuse it with the tea bundle we looked at yesterday. You can tell that this is much less constricted than either the bundle or the dumpling format. This is really just a series of longer leaves and branches that have been bundled together at this end. So I think this is probably the full length, pretty much the full length the tea will take when it's steeped. I'm just going to measure it now, and it's coming in, I don't know how well you can see that, but it's coming in at about 23 centimeters. So if you compare that to yesterday's bundle and then yesterday's dumpling, you can see that the broom is extensively larger, much bigger. That's partly because the dumpling, and I'll show you this time, is kind of folded in on itself. So I'm going to take away the dumpling and the bundle, and we'll just discuss very briefly some of these leaves themselves. I'm going to move this into the middle, if I can work out how to do that. And then we might take a bit of a zoom, just briefly, because I want to... There we go. Bit of a forensic close-up, but I just wanted you to see how much colour variation there is in colour in these leaves. This is white tea, which is minimally processed with very restricted oxidation, but that's not the same as no oxidation. So if I move this, you can see the kind of gradations in colour where there's been some oxidation of the leaves. And especially there, you can see there's much more of it. I'm going to try and reduce this zoom now because I want to show you one more feature of this tea. And that is, let's call this direction the width of the broom. And if I turn it that way, let's call that the depth in that direction. And you can see that it's almost twice as wide as it is deep. Whether there's some significance to that, I don't know. But anyway, let's move on to part 3. See you in a mo. Hello and welcome to part 3 of our video. We're now ready to brew our tea. So we have here our transparent jug so we can see what we're doing. We've got our trusty wide brim strainer, although I don't think that will be needed when I show you how big these leaves are, even dried. I've got the lid for the gaiwan here. I usually use that as a kind of platter so that you can see the leaves, but again, I'll explain why not, and our large-sized cup. So in the gaiwan, we've already got our tea all weighed out. It's about, well, it's 7.75 grams. So One River Tea's website, the instructions were somewhere between 6 to 8, so we're pushing it closer to the 8. There's quite a variety of material in here. We've got the twigs that came as part of the bundle. Don't know whether you can see those. Given they're part of the weight of the bundle, I figured I should put those in the mix. I've just broken those up. We've got scuttle or shake, however you want to phrase it, from the bottom of the box, and also that arose as I was taking twigs and leaves out of the bundle, out of the broom, let's call it that. And to give you some indication of why it takes up so much space, that's the leaf dry. That is an absolute beast of leaf, and it's by no means the biggest. But you can see how there's oxidation on that side of the leaf. See how dark that is compared to that side? Maybe you can't tell it too easily. But some of these have had a good dose of oxidation on one side and not the other. So I think we're about ready to brew. The other instruction from One River Tea was to brew this harder and further. In other words, higher temperature and for a longer duration. Normally a white tea, you'd be looking at 80 to 85, treating it with kid gloves unless you knew differently. With this one, I'm going to take them at their word, and we've pushed it up to 95. We'll give this a relatively long steep, almost as if it was a rolled oolong, just because there's a lot of twig and these leaves are pretty big. They're unfurled, but they're pretty big. So let's get on with our first steeping. Let's give this somewhere between 25 to 30 seconds. The usual 100 mils of water. Blimey, the water's just sitting on top of the leaves here. I honestly can't tell whether that's slightly more water or not. This is going to be something of a wild ride. So we've got leaves sticking out of the top here. That's it's not that there's so much tea, it's just that it takes up a lot of room. I'm feeling very giggly about this because I've no idea how it's going to turn out. So is that, it's sort of deigning to sink in a little. I assume something in there is steeping. Let's see if I can use the rim of the lid to help that process just a smidge. I think we're just about, there we go. A Gaiwan lid isn't a perfect seal, and you wouldn't want it to be, but that should hopefully enable a little bit of steeping to be undertaken. So the other thing to note is the tasting note about this tea. We're looking much more apparently towards the flavor profile of a red oolong. So something darker, something fruitier. Red fruits, much less to do with the milk and the white, which is a shame. It's the same strain of tea. It's the same Wild Fu'an Dabai cultivar. So let's try that now. As I say, I'm not quite sure what we are letting ourselves in for with this, but we're going to give it a try. Just make sure I've got all the water, otherwise it might continue to steep. We don't want that. There we go. Take a smell from the lid. It's hard to tell. I'm not picking up the cream, but there's maybe a herbal note. I think that's about as much as I can tell so far. It's a strong colour already. That's a first steep. 95 degrees centigrade, granted, but that's still a strong colour. So let's see what that's like to drink. Oh, let's take a smell. I'm not picking up the cream, but this is going to sound, this might be a bit hard to explain. I can tell now where that cream smell and taste is coming from. There's a sort of base note in here, which in the bundle and in the dumpling tastes like cream. In here, it's almost a sort of herbal savoury note. On the cup, just a kind of sweetness. Yeah, there's a sort of very gentle creaminess there in the background mixed with a bit of savoury. I've just realised I haven't got my wastewater jug, so I'm just going to go and get that and we'll have a seamless correction. Hello again. I was about to pour this out before I turned the camera back on when I noticed the tea is starting to smell differently now it's cooled. And now it's cooled on the jug and on the cup, what I'm picking up is a lot more of the lemon. It's much stronger in the lemon scent than even the sample that we that started this whole process off. So let's try. Yeah, there's a lot of lemon there. Herbal, lemony, almost zesty, and but with that, still with that kind of underlying cream. I'm going to finish this first steeping, but before we do that, let's get on to the next one. So we'll give this 30 seconds again. I'm not sure we can really do anything else. And it's pure guesswork how much water is going in there, given how much room this tea takes up. That you can probably see from there, can't you? It's not quite full of tea, but it's going to be by the time we finished steeping. That might almost be a photograph for a post. So we're going to give that the full 30 seconds. Come back to this. That's interesting. Now it's cooled. There's a lot more lemon and there's some cream there still. Not quite as strong as the cream as it was with the bundle of the dumpling, but it's there. That's a surprise. I suppose, I say it's a surprise, but I suppose it shouldn't be because the sample came in as a kind of miniature broom. That's what surprised me in the first place. I'd never seen tea in that format. Let's say I've seen it as dumplings, and I've seen it as a kind of bundle or a tea rod, as it's sometimes called, but I've never seen it just as a big broom of dried leaves on twigs. And yes, that's definitely where the flavour's coming from. That's wonderful. So we might give this a moment to kind of cool down while I get the next steeping running. That might be the best bet. So I think that's probably had long enough. I don't want to oversteep it, even though you can push it harder and further. Let's pour that out. Yeah, the lemon and the cream's coming through already, even before it's cooled. Yeah, lemon and cream and mown grass. That is absolutely fantastic. The colour is even more vibrant. That probably only had 20-25 seconds, I would say. The colour's much stronger. There we go, mown grass, cream, lemon. Let's take a wee sip. Actually, I'm going to pour that out to let it cool down a little bit. And we're going to get on with our next steeping. Still 95, just trying to make sure I don't take too long with these. This is starting to sink a lot more now. Now the leaves have had a chance to steep, so they can collapse in on themselves a little more readily. And let's see. It's just had a few seconds to cool, but already there's more cream. And let's see on the cup. Yeah, the lemon, there's an incredible amount of lemon. It's a lemon, some kind of lemon cream pudding. Not so much the vanilla. Oh, on the palate, the aftertaste, there's some of it there. Yeah, that's wonderful. Sorry for that interruption. It's not my day today, is it? So we're going to come to the fourth steeping, and we could probably get a fair few more, but we're going to leave it at that so this video doesn't go on for too long. So far, I've been surprised by this tea. When it's warm, you don't get so much of the cream and the lemon scent coming through. As it's cooling, you're picking it up stronger, and these later steepings, I presume as more flavour is being extracted from the leaves, it's coming out a bit stronger as well. So as much as you need the higher temperature to get the flavour out and the longer steepings, I think in terms of getting the best flavour, it's best to let the tea cool quite considerably. I was only putting a little bit in the cup at a time and then working backwards from there. So let's take a smell off the lid. Yeah, cream and a little bit of lemon. So we're going to push that down. These leaves are starting to get bigger again. So this is probably the most unruly tea I've ever brewed. A combination of massive dried leaves and now massive soaked leaves, lots of twig and the scuttle that came from the bottom of the packaging, and lots of broken leaves as I was trying to extract some for this brew. So it's been a bit of a ride, but I've really enjoyed this tea. I think that's probably fairly obvious. Final steeping. Lemon and cream. Still an incredibly vibrant colour. I dread to think how many steepings I'm going to get out of this. It's a good thing. I shouldn't really be complaining. But the previous video, I think I mentioned the tea made about 4.5 litres. The bundle made about 4.5 litres of tea, which is far too much for any one human being. I tried my very best, but after about 2.5 litres, I don't drink tea for the caffeine. So after 2.5 litres, even of relatively low caffeine white tea, I was starting to give it that, which at the end of the day isn't the best state to be in. Lemon and cream, because it's cooled down in the cup, you see. It's all there. It's incredibly rich. For a fourth steeping, a hard steeping as well, so you're getting a lot of the flavour out at a time. That I really would be curious to know, but I'm not going to do this on video. Okay, this has gone on long enough with various interruptions. I can hardly recommend this. Yes, it's a bit fiddly, to extract some of the leaves, and you saw how fiddly it was to try and get that original steeping. You could probably get away with a big teapot if you could tip it quickly enough, because it's getting longer steepings, I suppose. So maybe a small teapot would work. So you need to think about the best way to do that. Higher temperatures and a longer steep. So that's actually pretty tolerant for a white tea. It's not being very fussy. The flavour is very warding. If you let the tea cool a little bit, you're getting the full cream and the lemon. Maybe not so much the vanilla, but there's a lot of cream and a lot of lemon in this. So it's both very satisfying and it's very refreshing at the same time. That's not a combination you often find in tea. So, and I think I mentioned in the previous two videos, we're going to let it off in terms of availability, because the whole point of this trilogy was me following a train of thought. What was that sample from a few videos? What kind of teas were going to come as a result of that sample? So let me finish this mouthful. Lemon and cream once again. And all that is left for me to do is to say happy steeping and God bless.